Right? That's what they say in regarding to. That's what they say regarding what? Woodstock. Hello, gentlemen. I know you're very busy running the world, but we are in the middle of class. We are in Parsha. This week, we are in Parsha called Parshas Kisisa. Parshas Kisisa in the Chumoshim that you have in front of you is on page 520 in the book of Exodus, chapter 30, verse 11. It's a very, how should I say, this Parsha is a very difficult Parsha to deal with. But we are not going to deal with the difficulties. We're going to go with something lighter and easier since everybody's a little probably tired from a very big Purim celebration. The difficulty of this Parsha is obviously the story of the golden calf, Chet HaEgel, which takes the biggest chunk of information in this week's Parsha. The golden calf and Moses and the confirmation of Moses, and Moses wants to know God, and then he gets a second set of tablets, second luchot. God reveals to Moses the 13 attributes of mercy. He says, if you're going to mention my name, remind me that I'm a compassionate God, then I will forgive them. Kel, Chanun, Verachum. But I'm going to go back to the beginning of the Parsha, and this is the famous mitzvah called Machatzit HaShekel.
The half shekel.
Machatzit HaShekel means a half a shekel. So let's first just read 4 or 5 verses. That's the only information we have about it. On page 520, by Daber Hashem and Moshe Lemor, God speaks to Moses saying, Ki sisa et rosh bnei Israel lifkudeim. When you wish to take a census of the children of Israel, you want to know how many people are there. How do you do it? V'natnu ish kofer nafsho laHashem bifkodotam. Then each person shall give what the Torah calls kofer nafsho, the atonement of his soul, which we are ensuring that they should not be counted directly. Counting people directly somehow has the power to bring about an epidemic, a plague. Until today, when it comes to counting people in Judaism, we do not count them by number. If you want to know if there are 10 men in shul to make a minyan, usually you take a verse which has 10 words, and you follow the verse with the words of the verse with the people. What's the pasuk? Va'ani in Matov. Va'ani berov chazdecha avo beitecha eshtachave el eichal kochecha beiratecha. Now I know we are 10 here. This is a verse which is actually speaking about coming into the sanctuary. Va'ani berov chazdecha, with your great kindness, I come to the chamber of your holiness. That was the original verse which was used. It's interesting that today, it's already for hundreds of years, not so many years, that the verse has changed with another famous verse from Tehillim. Oshia et amecha uvarech et nachlatecha ureim v'nasem ad ha'olam, which is a verse which says, help and save your nation, and bless your inheritance, and pasture them, and lead them from today and forever.
Which Tehillim? Which one?
Which Tehillim is the Shir Samecha? I have to take out that Tehillim to show you. But we have it in our prayers every morning, so take a look in a moment. So this verse, the Rebbe once said that this verse apparently was also changed
Cleaner.
because
Every day,
you
clean.
realize more and more
It'll stop in a couple
that
seconds.
we need- Karen,
Yeah.
I think that the people hear you. I think you should maybe,
Sorry, I
if you're
thought it was
speaking,
muted.
it's okay. No, it's fine. It's fine. You don't bother me.
There
Just
was a noise here and I got
I don't want you to speak Lashon Hara in public. Everyone's gonna hear you.
scared. 1 minute, how do I get this thing off? I thought automatic the recording went off.
It's okay, Karen. I don't mind it. I just okay. Very good. Now you are mute. If you want to say something, unmute yourself. We'd love to hear it. So Yeshia is Samecha, because the Rebbe said that as we getting closer to Mashiach, we realize how much we need Mashiach more than anything. So that became the verse. Either way, there's no counting. There's a whole subject on itself. How we count, even in the temple, they used to each one take out their index finger and count the fingers. They were all to do with counting and so on. But here the Torah continues on verse 13, Zeitnu kol oiver al apkudim. This shall they give everyone who goes through the counting. Well, how does the system work? Machatzit shekel b'shekel hakodesh. A half a shekel. According to the shekel measurement system, which used for sanctified items. What is that? Esrim geiro shekel. It's a shekel which has 20 geiro, is 1 shekel. And then what you have it, machachita shekel, a half of that 20, trum al Hashem. You should give as a gift to Hashem. Clear? Now that we know what geiro is, now that we know what shekel is, but there was a common currency during desert time. And then it continues that who has to give the half a shekel? Anyone who's 20 years and older, and everybody gives the same, equal. Ashir lo yarbeh. The rich should give no more than a half a shekel. Vehadal lo yamit, and the poor should give no less than a half a shekel. Latet et rumat Hashem lechaper al nafsotechem, and that was again the contribution of an atonement. This half a shekels was in this week's Parsha. At that point, it was mainly used to buy and to organize the adanim, the sockets, you call it, which were keeping the beams of the Mishkan. Sockets, yes. That's called the foundation kind of sockets, which kept the beams. That would be one of the contributions. And throughout the temple time, every Jew would bring a half a shekel every single year, every community member. Usually the time of bringing it would start exactly today, the 15th of Adar. As the Rambam actually, we have a tractate of Mishnah called Shkalim, which goes a lot in the details of this mitzvah. We have a section in Jewish law called the Laws of Shkalim, which is an important section in Jewish law, which deals with many details. And the Rambam has, I think, 3 or 4 chapters, which he goes in also to details regarding this mitzvah of the half a shekel. And the Rambam quotes the Mishnah, which says, Be'echad be'adar, that used to be on the first day of the month of Adar, they used to send messengers announcing that everybody should get ready to prepare a half a shekel that you will have to give in the next couple weeks. The collectors are going to come pick up the half a shekels. So if you're rich, sometimes your money is all mortgaged. So you make sure that at least you take out a half a shekel. If you're poor, you go to collect and seek out help. So you should be able to have with you the half a shekel. On the 15th of Adar, says the Rambam, B'chamisha Asar, today was the 15th of Adar, Yashvu HaShulchanim B'chol Medina u'Medina. They used to go to every province, to every country, messengers, which they were called Shulchanim. Shulchanim means, it's usually a translation for money exchangers. They were borrowing the term You didn't have to be an expert money exchanger, but you had to understand that you're not getting fooled. You're getting a half a shekel. You had to know what a half a shekel looks like. But from the 15th of Adar, they used to sit and collect. And as the Rambam writes very interestingly, Vetovin benachat. Tovim means they are expecting or they are requesting the half a shekel. Benachat means with pleasantness. This is till the end. Don't leave now. You're going to think it's not all this pleasant. They used to collect it benachat. What's nachat mean? Pleasantness. Kol mishiten lahem yakalum. Anybody who gives the half a shekel, they receive it. Then the Rambam continues. 10 days later, b'chamisha ve'esrim, when it came the 25th of Adar, then they sat in the Bet HaMikdash, and everybody who didn't give yet, they had people sitting in the temple itself, collecting the half a shekel. After the 25th, whoever did not give yet, says the Rambam, Mikan ve'elech, kofim et mi shelo natan ad sheiten. They force every person in every community that are enforcers, and they enforce every member of the Jewish community to give a half a shekel. V'chol mi shelo yiten, what happens if you don't give? Memashkenim oto velokchim avoto bal korcho, which means in English, they would pick up a collateral against the half a shekel, against his will. What is a collateral? So usually when it comes to a collateral, you can only pick up, even if somebody, for example, took a loan and you're allowed to take a collateral, there are limitations what type of collateral, what kind of items you can take as collateral. You cannot take away someone's shirt of his back as a collateral. However, here says the Rambam, ve'afilu ksuto, even his garment. You take his shirt, say, bye. When you want it back, make sure you give me half a shekel. This is for those who did not give volunteeringly. So
Did they have to return it in the evening and then pick it up?
It doesn't say, I know, by loans it says, I don't know, it doesn't say that it contains the conditions of loans. It's a very interesting mitzvah, which means, if you want to look at it on legal terms, it's like collecting a debt. It's not like, I want to give half a shekel, I want to be part of it. It's not about what you want, you owe us. So if you're going to give it, it's good. If not, then we're going to have to come and pick it up from you because it's a chov, it's a debt that you owe. Which is interesting too, and hopefully we'll discuss a little bit tonight. We're talking about atonement. We're talking about redeeming your soul. That's what the Torah refers to it. What kind of redemption of one's soul is accomplished when you force yourself to an M and take away something which belongs and it screams, I don't want to give it. So you will take it anyway, and you will achieve atonement in that way. Doesn't make too much sense to me. I think atonement should be given, willingly. Atonement should be given with a desire that I want to be atoned. That needs clarification, which hopefully we will also use tonight. But I don't want to go into the laws of Shkalim, which is a very interesting subject on itself. I just want to go to something also fascinating about that which took place between God and Moses in regard to the mitzvah of a half a shekel. There are 3 places in the Torah when God speaks to Moses, and the verse uses the term vezeh. And this is Maaseh HaMenorah. This is the work of the candelabra. This is the animal you should eat, vezot. This is what you should give. That's how the verse begins. Verse 13. Zeitnu. This is what they should give. Whenever it says the word this is, says the Talmud, the Medrash, that God is showing Moshe a physical image, an image of what I'm expecting. But when it came to the menorah, we understand Moses had difficulty to understand how is it supposed to work. A menorah made from one solid piece of gold, but you're not supposed to craft it by adding pipes to it and making it look like the 7-candle candelabra. And God had to show him. Exactly what is the difficulty with a half a shekel is again with all commentaries of surprise. Moses knew what a half a shekel looks like. It's a half a shekel. And if you never saw a half a shekel, you go to your neighbor and you say, do you have a half a dollar? Can you show me what it looks like? You have a half a dinar? Go over, go to the bank. There is ways to find out what a half a shekel is. Yet the Talmud says, and Rashi brings it in his commentary to the verse. What does Rashi say? That God took out from under his throne of glory. God has a chair that he's sitting on. That chair is described by the prophet Ezekiel, right? And what is the kind of chair? He sits on Kisei HaKavod. It's called the throne of glory. And under the chair, God picked up a coin, which the Medrash says it was a fiery coin, Matbea Shel Esh. And he shows Moses, this is what I want you, they should give. What's this fiery coin? And if it's fire, how does fire become a coin? If it's a coin, how's a coin fire? And what is it going to help Moses, the fact that this is a fiery coin? We are not walking around with fiery coins and presenting it and dealing with it. You touch fire, God forbid, right? So what is this fiery coin that we're talking about? So all these and many other questions, what is the idea of a half a shekel? Since when does God work with halves? Usually God is always interested in completion. A full item, and the animal cannot have no blemish. Don't bring me a half an animal. Or even an animal which is full, but it's just missing one eye. No. It has to be full, it has to be complete. Here, suddenly, the whole mitzvah is, God said half. One half. So like I said, anyone who opens a Chumash with commentary, this week's Parsha, is going to find a lot of discussion, a lot of ink was poured into understand this mitzvah. And I'm sure through the years they spoke about it too, some of it. And what I want to go tonight is more trying to understand the fiery coin. That's the topic of tonight. And I'm going to have a very interesting story for you. Only for those who came to class, either by Zoom or in present. But you're going to hear the story too. So first of all, when it comes to understanding the fiery coin, there is a so-called very common explanation, which is being used by commentators. Rabbis like to share it. It's a very relevant lesson that we can derive from the idea. That's why it's known to be the so-called the common explanation of this mitzvah. But by the way, this mitzvah is not only spoken about and discussed in this week's Parsha Tisa, but also remember 2 weeks ago. If you don't remember what happened last night, that's the way it should be. But 2 weeks ago, the Shabbos before Rosh Chodesh Adar, we were reading this very section, the 6 verses, which is the beginning of this week's Parsha, we read as an addition to the weekly Torah portion, because it was the Shabbos before the new month of Adar, which then is when we announce somebody half a shekel. So there's a tradition in every synagogue to read it. So that's also an opportunity that many rabbis and teachers and classes are discussing this mitzvah. So this is being discussed twice a year at least. You have to, first of all, understand something very obvious and simple, that what was mainly used during temple times with the half a shekel coin was that the fact that every single Jew has to bring every single day 2 offerings to the temple. That's called the daily ongoing offering, Korban Tamid. There was an obligation that we read about it in last week's Parsha, and we're going to also study about it later. In Vayikra, את הכבש אחד תעשה בבוקר, ואת הכבש השני תעשה בין הערביים. You have to bring a lamb every single day. Now, there are people who would be very happy to go visit the temple every single morning and every single afternoon and be part of an exciting offering experience. They can afford it time-wise. They like what they see, and they leave clothes. But what happens to the majority of the community, who cannot go every single day and cannot visit Jerusalem every day? How do you fulfill this mitzvah? So for that, the Torah introduces the concept of the half a shekel. That was one of the purposes of the half a shekel. You give once a year a half a shekel, which goes into a general community charity box, and this half a shekel is what is being used by the temple to purchase the daily lambs for the daily sacrifices. So by you giving a half a shekel, you are a member in that charity box. So every single day, a lamb is being offered in the morning and the afternoon on your behalf, just by the half a shekel that you gave. It's like a membership. But every year, starting Rosh Chodesh Nisan, which is in 2 weeks from today, is when the Torah requires us to purchase lambs from the new collective funds. So you have to remember, it's not a membership for life. The half a shekel goes for 1 year. It expires in Adar. And from Rosh Chodesh Nisan, new funds, only the newly collected funds, which is being used as a half a shekel contribution to purchase the daily sacrifices. And in the Talmud, there's a whole discussion, what do we do with the leftover money? Sometimes they collected more half a shekels than they need for the lambs. So it was all used for the temple, but exactly what purpose in the temple, is what the Gemara and the Halakha discusses, the Rambam brings down. But the idea was that we were every single day represented in the temple by this half a shekel gift. So the common denominator, what goes through among all the different commentaries, if you look in books and in Svarim and hear classes, you're going to hear about that what God is showing Moshe is not what you give, but how you should give it. As the Medrash says, that Moshe was actually wondering, how can a half a shekel bring atonement? It's a little coin. How is that able to atone? Something so small. So when you read that question, you immediately wonder, on every mitzvah you can ask the same question. Like, what is Moshe getting so surprised suddenly when he hears a half a shekel, meat and milk together? Those make sense to you, Reb Moshe? Also not. And wool and linen in this weather, does make sense to you? Also not. So when you never ask questions, and the red heifer for sure doesn't make any sense to you. How does this purify you? So Moshe has no questions in any of those subjects. Suddenly, when it comes to the half a shekel, oh God, what's going on? How's it going to work exactly? So obviously, that wasn't the question of Moses trying to understand how is the half a shekel going to work. He wanted more to understand what is it in the half a shekel that brings atonement. Is there something I should share with the community? Should I tell them? So God tells Moses here, it's all about the fire. The fiery coin, obviously, we're not walking around with fire. No one is carrying fire in his hands. A fiery coin is the attitude beyond the giving. You can give it forcefully, you can give it coldly, and God says, if you want to have a giving which shall atone you, you better give it with fire. Give it with enthusiasm. Give it with excitement. Because the quantity is really nothing. It's a half a shekel. I'm not looking for the quantity. I'm interested in the fire behind the coin, which is the quality of how you present it to me. This is what many commentaries explain. But again, it's the same question. Why does he have to show him a coin of fire? I can tell him, Moses, I want you to give it, tell him, it's a half a coin, but it has to be given with enthusiasm. A half a coin, a half a shekel. You know what a half a shekel is, Moses, right? Yes, Kanyeshna, I know. Oh, you know that? Perfect. So now that you know that, you know what fire is? Yes. I want that the giving should be with fire. I'm not interested in a cold giving. But that, again, needs further clarification because, like we said before, you can even force someone to give a half a shekel if he doesn't give it by the 25th of Adar, right? We just read from the Rambam. And when you force someone, the least you can expect is he should give it, but you can force him to give a half a shekel, you can take away his gatkes, take away his chveisvos, but you can't fire him up. If he's not interested, he's not interested. If he's not interested, he's not interested. We all know that, right? Not interested. But you want me to do it, Ma? I will do it for you. Thank you. I'm not interested. I don't want you just to do it. I want you to do it because you, but I'm not. So what do you want? So how does it work? Especially if the old message is fire, how does force work? Yeah. So here really is one of the places in Jewish law even that we have to get in a little bit to the inner dimension of it, the so-called Kabbalistic or Hasidic or esoteric understanding of this mitzvah. We know when it comes to fire, there is a concept of fire. There is a small piece of fire that everybody carries within them, right? What is the fire within us? Spark of life, or which we call the neshama. What is King Solomon describing the soul? Ner Hashem nishmat adam. The soul of man is called the candle of God. It's a candle. It's a little candle. That's why, God forbid, when somebody passes away, to remember the person who died, to commemorate them, light a candle in their honor, because that's the closest. What is death? Death is that the soul separated from the body. So, but the soul is still around somewhere, and we want to keep a connection with the soul. So what do? We light a candle. The candle reminds us, and the candle reflects the soul. This is what Ner is, that what Neshama is. Neshama is really a fire. So when we speak about sin, golden calf, atonement, we always have to go back to the story of the soul. That's where it goes back. Sin is a impact on our souls. That's why the verse uses lechaper al anafshetechem, right? Last three words on verse 16. Lechaper anafshetechem translate to atone for your soul. So this all half a shekel was clearly atonement for your soul. So you can't get away from the subject without talking about soul. And how does it work? How does a soul get atoned? So here there's a very important and very fundamental concept which is being discussed Chassidus, and obviously the Rebbe spoke about it also in Lent, in different occasions. When the golden calf took place, the severity of that sin, as those who are going to read the Parsha later, or read it already, or remember it from last year, there was a completely, we can use the term detachment from God. Going to declare on a golden calf that this is my God, this is the words they use. Eile Elokecha Yisrael. This is your God, Israel. The God who what? The God who created the world, the God who took me out of Egypt 3 months ago, the God that split the sea, the God that's 40 days earlier I saw at Sinai. The heck, what kind of word is that? Making a little a little chicken, whatever came out there, I don't know, a calf, made out of gold coming out of the fire, and this becomes God. This is so senseless. And obviously, this is, like I said, this is the difficult subject of this parsha, which we are not discussing tonight. But this is the fact. They turned to a golden calf and they declared, you are God, completely denying the existence of an eternal God, completely pretending that they never met God, they never experienced anything by God, just newly created God. Went to the Lego store and picked up a God. That's what they do in India and all kind of places. They pick up something, a cow, whatever. This is my God. Shkoya. What do you mean? He was just born. I saw him. I saw his mother. How can he become my God? I might be even older than the God. How did he make me if he wasn't around when I was made? That's called idol worship. But philosophically, you are separating yourself from God on the highest level. Every time a person does something which is against God's will, is a declaration of separation. You want me to do it? I don't want to do it. You don't want me to do it? I will do it anyway. So you're saying, okay, I'm on my own. But this is not as bad when you are taking something and declaring it as God. You say God doesn't exist. When you don't listen to someone, it doesn't mean don't exist. I accept you're my mother, you're my father, but I want to do what I want. They can even tell you I love you while they are ready to do what they want and you don't want them to do. Right? That's why the Torah doesn't say love your parents. There's no mitzvah to love your parents. The mitzvah is to honor, respect your parents. Because loving is, I love you, but I do what I want. It doesn't mean that they have to listen to you. But when you honor and respect, right? In America, it's so kabubbled, this whole mitzvah. Everyone thinks that, you don't love me. It's not about love. We love our parents twice a year. Father's Day and Mother's Day. That's the time that we give them love. The rest of the year, we have to respect them. That's what I tell my kids. To love me, Father's Day, you're going to show me that you love me. Now I want you to respect me. 364 days a year, you're going to respect me and do what I want. One day a year, you do what you want by loving me. If that's how you present the love. I'm sure when the angel went through, it says there was an angel who traveled through the different countries. And there was actually, the Talmud said that he was looking for every country to see if they are ready to accept the Torah. And each one gave an excuse. So it says that Ishmael said, what does it say? God said, don't murder. Oh, that's what it says, not for us. A different nationality, it says, don't steal, not for us. So there was a song. There was a famous composer called Yontev Herlich. He used to sing Yiddish songs. And he had a whole song about this angel. The Malach geflogen, and he goes with the Malach, the angel going. He used to hear it as kids. In the song, he brings additions, which the Talmud doesn't talk about, but he brings that now the angel is in America finally. And he comes to America and he tells the American people, I have a Torah for you. Sagen die man kann, was dort steht, tell us, what does it say? So he tells them, honor your father and mother. And they said, "Oh no, sorry for that. Me have Father's Day, Mother's Day. We don't. You can't expect us to have a whole year this mitzvah." Anyway, so the point is that when it comes to not to listen to Hashem, everybody understands you are creating a dent in your soul, because the soul is the godly aspect, which is the godliness within you, which expects you to behave, and you say no, putting a stain. But you never separate yourself from God. But if you go and you declare there is no God, well, not because you're an atheist, there is no God because you're taking another God and saying this is the God, the rock, the stone, the dollar, whatever it is. But then you are creating a separation. That's why idol worship is from the only 3 commandments that you have to let yourself die. God forbid, if you are forced to worship an idol, if you are forced to eat bread on Pesach, somebody said, the police said, I take your life if you don't eat it, eat bread. Then next year you're going to keep Pesach again properly. You're going to escape Russia. You're going to be able to eat matzah, whatever. But when it comes to idol worship, that's a very factual, historical part of the Jewish people to add history, that you allow yourself to die, unless you were able to hide, like in the times of the Spanish Inquisition, created the whole movement of the Marranos, and this only happened 500 years ago. It's not so many years. Because this is the type of sin that you are not just denting your soul, you are separating yourself from God. So when the Jewish people are standing now after the sin of the golden calf, and God is looking to atone their sins, that was the main reason for the half a shekel. The Talmud said it very clearly. That's why it also says half a shekel. Because the Jewish people sinned at half day. You know, that half time when it comes to a Super Bowl, whatever. So there was half day when the golden calf took place. They waited 6 hours for Moses to arrive. Came 12 o'clock. He didn't come. Oops. Now Moses is not coming anymore. Time to create a golden calf. So the Talmud says, Rabbi Nehemiah, Rabbi Yehuda, they both say that the half a shekel, since there was an atonement for the golden calf, so it looks at something which is the symbolic number half, because it was half day, or it was the 6th hour of the day, which is again half of the day. So clearly it was an atonement for the golden calf. But when it comes to atone the golden calf, how can atonement take place? What's the question? Atonement means, here, I wronged you. Let's try and to meet up a connection that we have, which is beyond the doing and the non-doing. But usually atonement works, right? Forgiveness. How does forgiveness work? You wronged me. I'm upset. So we're sitting down. What I did was wrong. But I'm your child, I'm your parent, I'm your good friend. Let's go behind the wrongdoing, let's forgive each other. Okay. That's how forgiveness usually works. You can only forgive because there's a connection beyond that isolated activity which separated you. But what happens if there is no connection altogether? Which is basically the sin of idol worship. God, I have nothing with you. I'm going to eat chametz on Passover. I have nothing with you. I'm separating myself from you. No connection at all. At that point, how does atonement take place? There's no place in you that you can reach into atone. Comes the fiery coin. And God says, here, let me show you where this coin is coming from. This is, by the way, the Orach Kadosh says it on this verse, in verse 3, and the Alshich says the same thing. God says, hold on, let me go find a a place where I can somehow, I'm going to be able to connect with you. And the open, revealed path of relationship, it doesn't exist. But behind and under the throne of glory, you know what comes from under the throne of glory? The expression a lot of times in the Talmud, in the Midrash, is neshamot shegnutzot mitachat kisei hakavod. The souls, our souls, are also coming from the same root, under the throne of glory. Whatever it is, the location, the important. It's the brand, what's matter. That's what it's called. So if you think about it, as the Chaim, the Rebbe elaborates on it, we're talking about God is showing Moses a fiery coin. Doesn't just say fiery coin. They know about it. But presenting them that fiery coin, then you can relate to them the message that I saw when God wanted to bring a half a shekel of a fiery coin which is under the throne of glory, meaning that you should all remember that as far as you went gone, you're still not completely separated. No matter where you're Merom, you can always come back home. This is what the half a shekel represents. A deep connection, which it's interesting, by a korban, for example, by a sacrifice, a person has to give willingly. Even if you force him, sometimes you force him, but you force him to the point that he says, I really want to do it. The Rambam has a very interesting explanation, that sometimes force brings out your truth. You got to force him, sometimes give him a little smack, so you should, is real, it's like shaking him up. And then he says, I want, and it's not lying, he's not doing it because he's forced. You just triggered it by reminding him what he really wants. But by the golden calf, it wasn't even that. The idea of forcing them, the original half a shekel, was they couldn't say I want, because they weren't in any place of saying we want. They were completely detaching themselves, separating themselves of any level of connection with God. It's from above only. God says, here, I can tell you that you want, because I know where you're coming from. And that's what the halacha means when it says you force someone to give the half a shekel, right? And you hope that when he gives it, it means that it's going to atone him. It doesn't mean that you force him in a way by grabbing something away from him and he can't say no. You remind him, you let him understand that there is one nucleus, deep connection that you have with God that was never separated. And that will bring you the atonement. So he doesn't even know how to say, I want it. But the connection is there. That was the fire. Matbea Shalesh. I will tell you a story. Again, this is not to share. It's only for those who are in class. This is a story what happened in 1973. Tafshin Lamed Gimel. In New York, a young man was sent, now is story time, okay? Ready? A young man was sent by the Rebbe Shliach in South Africa. His name is Rabbi Lipsker, let him live healthy. He sent a young student with the name of Shmuel, who kept on talking about his strong beliefs in Christ. Okay, in Yashka. And Rabbi Lipska felt that what could work is maybe to send them off to 770 to New York. And he got one of the students to study with them and to talk to him. That student is today the chief rabbi of the city of Eilat in Israel, Rabbi Yossi Hecht, who shares some part of the story. Rabbi Hecht is learning with them, talking to them. It's like talking to the walls. The guy is convinced that Yashka really exists, and we have to believe in him, God forbid. And there's no way to get around it. It's in that. But it's in English, it's screwed in his head. He can't. Meantime, the Rebbe is also checking on him. What's going on? The Rebbe is getting updates. He came into a private audience with the Rebbe. He was there for 20 minutes. And in these 20 minutes, he never shared what the Rebbe spoke to him. Meantime, there is a letter, and I have a copy of his letter, and the Rebbe's writing on his letter. I have the written letter. He wrote in English, the Rebbe writes him back in Hebrew. He writes that the Rebbe, just before Purim, 1973, a few days before Purim, he says, Rebbe, thank you very much for the learning and for the opportunity, but I cannot stand anymore in Crown Heights. It's not a neighborhood I can be. People are very disrespectful to Yashka. And they are not sensitive, and I cannot be. I believe that this is not a neighborhood for me. The Rebbe responds to this person. I'm reading you the word of the Rebbe. To him is as follows. The Rebbe writes there. Oh, the guy also wrote to the Rebbe, I believe that God wants me to leave Crown Heights. So the Rebbe says, it's absolutely not right. Not So we should be able to celebrate together all three holidays, Passover, Shavuot, and Sukkot. And in parentheses, the Rebbe writes, and I also want you to be at my birthday.
Yeah.
The Rebbe's birthday is 3 days before Pesach, including Simchas Torah. Meantime, you're going to spend your time continuing learning Torah in depth, with vitality and energy, that you should even influence others to learn. And God will grant you success because this is his real wish, God's real wish. Just in parentheses, this letter, and the letter is printed today also in the 28th volume of the Rebbe's letters, 1973. Again, if we talk about the Rebbe's love to every Jew, imagine a Jew, his mind is completely preoccupied with worship, to the point that he cannot stand Crown Heights anymore because no one is following him. And the Rebbe says to this Jew, you, I want you at my birthday. I want to celebrate with you. And the Rebbe is not like a salesman. I want you, but I really don't want you. When the Rebbe says, I want you, it's 100% emes, truth. I want you to be here in Crown Heights on my birthday, and I want you to be in Pesach, or Shavuot, in 770, and to learn Torah, knowing what this guy is preoccupied with. This letter is written by the Rebbe the 17th of the second Adar, which means 2 days after Purim. 3 days later, it's Shabbat, the Shabbos after Purim. Shabbos after Purim, the Rebbe is a Farbrengen. And this young man was then staying for Shabbat in a house of somebody in Flatbush. His name was Rabbi Abu Chatzira. He's a Chabad Abu Chatzira. There's a Chabad Abu Chatzira family also. We have a little of everything. So the Abu Chatzira, he used to have a house which was like a outreach house, like in Flatbush that he used to learn with students. And this student actually stayed in his house for that Shabbat. And they walked from Flatbush to Crown Heights to be by the Rebbe's Farbrengen. So they came in when the Rebbe was already holding in the middle of the Farbrengen, came in late. And they were climbing on the bench to get to a seat. The place was packed, there's no 770. You can see pictures of a Farbrengen. So they climbed over the benches. And while they were climbing, everybody realized there are two people climbing, and the Rebbe was staring at his boy as long he makes his way. And as he sits down, the Rebbe began talking about the half a shekel. And the Rebbe said that the half a shekel is about the fire which is under the throne of glory. And a Jew calls out to God and he says, I want you to atone my misbehavior. I separated myself from me. He thinks to himself, how would God listen to me if I'm so far and so separated? So the Rebbe, it's not true. You have a fire burning in you, and that fire was never extinguished. And the Rebbe shared a story, an interesting story. It's a long story, but I'm going to say it in short. The Rebbe shared a story, it's all printed, a story which took place by the Alte Rebbe Reb Shneur Zalman. He said the year Tafkuf Lamed Zayin. Tafkuf Lamed Zayin was almost 200 years before 1973. 200 minus 5 years. 195 years earlier. The Alte Rebbe was sitting on Chanukah, after Shabbat Chanukah at the Balave Malka, having like a Farbrengen. When suddenly a woman came in, this story actually was written and recorded by the previous Rebbe that he heard it from his Zayda. A woman walked in with your daughter, crying bitterly. What happened? Your son-in-law was a very scholarly young man, and he loved to have discussions with some Christians about belief, my belief, you believe, I believe, but don't you believe? And he was actually very much representing the Jewish concept of belief. And they were very impressed by him. And they started giving him a lot of honor and respect. They appreciated his wisdom. And he became so connected that he started liking the fact that here I'm being very honored by those Christians. They look at me, they pay attention to me, they respect me, they think I'm smart, I'm wise. Among my brothers in synagogue, I don't get that respect, you know. He started getting ideas, and they were offering him sometimes to stay with them a little longer, some nights, to the point that this woman gets a letter written by her son-in-law that I'm converting. It was on Shabbat when she got the letter, Saturday night. She lived the rest. He writes, we should live not far from Lyozhna. The Rebbe was then in a town called Lyozhna. This is Belarus today. And he was in Vitebsk, yeah, something close. She came flying Motzei Shabbos, running to the Alter Rebbe. She came in when he was sitting there crying bitterly. Rebbe, I need the help. I think his name was Velvel. Velvel wants to convert. The Alter Rebbe says, I don't know what to tell you. I'm going to tell you a story what happened when I studied by the Maggid in Mezrich. Something similar. There too, some father came running to the Maggid screaming that his son wants to convert to Christianity. And what should he do? And he's crying. And the Maggid then used a verse in the beginning of Leviticus. It says, Nefesh kisechto. When a soul commits a sin, he has to bring this and this offering. So the Zohar HaKadosh says, Nefesh kisechto tvo. Tvo means the Torah is wondering, Nefesh kisechto? Can a soul sin? It's not written passively. It's written in a questionable tune. How can a soul sin? And how the Maggid was saying it, there was a big wind outside. And this son of the young man came running in, saying, he actually wants to regret his decision, his thoughts. And that's what the Alter Rebbe said. And he just tells the lady the story. This is all what the Rebbe is speaking the Shabbos, but the Farbrengen. He says over the story. And nobody understands why is the Rebbe saying it. And the Alter Rebbe, after he told the story to the lady, to the mother and the daughter, the wife of the guy who wanted to go to convert, they left the room, and the Alter Rebbe told the students to spend the night in reciting Tehillim together for the return of that husband. And as the story is described, they were reading Tehillim, and whilst they are reading, a young man came to join them. They knew exactly who this young man is. He didn't identify himself, but they already understood who he is. He went back to his wife, and the whole family came out of him. And the Rebbe is explaining what happened. What happened? What happened is the message of this Parsha. There is a half a shekel, which is from a fiery coin placed under the throne of glory. This is specifically granted and given in order to atone your sins, to show you that there is always some type of connection that in the normal way of life you're not going to find it. And that's why we can even force a person to do it, because he's not going to find it himself unless you force him sometimes. He's only going to find out about it when you force him. In his consciousness, he cannot find that connection. And that is the story I shared, the Rebbe says, meaning the previous story, in connection with the half a shekel. Only later, they found out, because Rabbi Hecht, and there was also Rabbi Yoel Khan, the Rebbe used to review the Rebbe's talks every end of Shabbos. These two knew this young man. But nobody in the crowd knows what he's going through, what he's dealing with. And they noticed when he walked in over the benches, when the Rebbe was staring at him, and following that came that insight, that talk about the half a shekel, was all to remind and that person where he comes from. That's it. Have a good Shabbos. Enough.
What was the end of the?
Oh, everybody wants to know the end. Everybody wants to know the end. You can imagine what's the end. What's the end?
He didn't convert.
He didn't convert, for sure not. How can you convert?
The spark became a fire.
A spark becomes a fire, no question. If there is a spark, there is a fire. Sometimes, in Hasidus, they speak about two types of fires. I mean, Eden fires. There is fire which is found in coals.
Yeah.
Coals. Which the fire there is alive. You don't see it, but if you fan it or if you blow on it, it sparks up. Then there's another type of fire. There is a stone, a rock, which it's called chalomish in English. It has like a fire inside it. What do you call it?
Flint?
Flint. The flint rock, you can even keep it in water, right? The coals, if you keep in water, it's eventually going to turn off the fire because it's hidden, but it's still activated. The flint has a fire. Only when you take it and you rub it against another stone, then the spark comes out. So this is the type of people sometimes, they're like rocks, but even in the rock, there is a spark, and they gotta crush them against another fleet stone, and somehow more rubbing and more rubbing and more rubbing, suddenly, and once the fire sparks up, the power is infinite. That's it. Something to think about with At L'chaim. You said enough L'chaim yesterday. You don't have to say L'chaim anymore. Till after Pesach for sure. Gabbai, till after Pesach, no L'chaim? Agree.
I heard another very good story about Baal Shem Tov, the same thing.
Yeah. Possible.
Toda
The
Rabbi.
main thing is to remind people. You're very welcome.
Toda.
Main thing is to also remind people that they have the fire. I want to tell you, I didn't, hold on a second. Instead of Baal Shem Tov, be reminding people. Here, this book is called Baal Shem Tov. Teacher, the Baal Shem Tov says on the even one more minute, Parsha Tisa. Here, this is a book called Baal Shem Tov ala Torah. Okay, for different students of the Baal Shem Tov. So here he brings something also about the fiery coin, something similar but close. He brings the medrash. There was a fiery coin. So the Baal Shem Tov says, I once heard mashal. I heard a parable to explain it. That somebody was learning how to be a goldsmith. To work with jewelers. And he learned the whole craft, spent time with them, and then he wrote him on a list. He gave him a list. The teacher gave him a list of every item, listing out, organizing what he needs to do in accomplishing his work. And one thing he forgot to tell him, that the initial story of being a goldsmith, you have to turn on the fire. But he thought, I have to remind him too. This is obvious. This is the main thing. Without fire, it's not going to move. So he wrote him all this, but he did not write, talking about fire, Daniel, he did not write them about this little, important message. He forgot. He forgot. And the guy is working and is following the instructions and nothing is happening. And he goes back to his teacher all upset and says, come on, I thought I paid all this money. I thought you're going to teach me something and nothing is working. He said, tell me what you're doing. And he realizes that the main thing he forgot. So the Baal Shem Tov, this is the whole method of the fiery coin. The old fiery coin is to remind us that the main thing is the fire spark, which needs to be inflamed. If you don't inflame that, there's nothing to talk about. Tournament, Torah, mitzvahs, it's all about the fire. Enjoy, everybody. Laila Tov.
Laila
All those who
Tov.
need fire, you have it. You only have to uncover it. Thank you very much. Have a
Laila
wonderful
Tov.
Thank
good
you,
night.
Rabbi.
Laila
Thank
Tov.
you.
Laila Tov.
Shalom, shalom.
All the best.
Take care.
All
Be
the
well.
best.
All the
Sei
best.
gesund. Sei
All the
gesund.
best to you.
Take care.
Sei gesund, sei
Hi,
gesund,
Karen.
stark.
Hi, Karen.
Where in Flatbush was this, by the way?
We're in Flatbush,
I
you
lived in
know.
Flatbush for a year. How can you check?
How do you get off this? Sure with that. Usually what do you do? End? Not to. I think so.
Still going? Or?
Yeah. So, here, check it. Here, end.
And